Take that junk away before it leaks oil on my floor. Vivian Hartwell said it with a smile polished enough for cameras and cold enough to make the whole showroom turn quiet for half a breath before the laughter began. Caleb Whitaker stood beside the broken 1967 Mustang with one hand resting on the faded blue fender and the other holding his daughter's small fingers, and he did not answer the way proud men answer when pride is all they have left. The Mustang coughed behind him, its old engine ticking like a tired heart, its chrome dulled, its paint scarred by years of rain, road salt, and promises postponed. Around them, the Hartwell Motors Charity Showcase glittered with million-dollar concept cars, polished floors, champagne glasses, and men in suits who knew the price of everything and the weight of almost nothing. "Sir, this event is for restoration candidates, not scrap metal," Grant Maddox said, stepping forward with a microphone still clipped to his lapel. "Maybe the junkyard entrance is around back." A few people laughed louder. Someone lifted a phone. Lily Whitaker, 9 years old, with pale cheeks and a sketchbook pressed to her chest, leaned closer to her father's side. "Daddy," she whispered, "is he talking about Mom's car?" Caleb's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with the kind of hurt a father tries to swallow before it reaches his child. He looked down at her, then at the little Mustang emblem that had come loose and fallen near the front tire. He bent slowly, picked it up, and rubbed the dirt from it with the sleeve of his worn flannel shirt. Vivian watched him as if he were part of the entertainment, a poor single dad dragging yesterday into a room built for tomorrow. She was beautiful in the way glass towers are beautiful, sharp, expensive, untouchable. Her white blazer caught the showroom lights. Her heels clicked once against the marble as she stepped closer. "Mr. Whitaker, was it?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "You really thought this belonged beside Hartwell Engineering?" Caleb looked at the Mustang, then back at her. "I thought it deserved a chance." Grant chuckled. "A chance? That thing needs a miracle, not a mechanic." Lily's fingers tightened around Caleb's hand. The sound of laughter moved through the room like a draft under a closed door. Caleb heard it all. The whispers. The phone's recording. The word poor, spoken softly, as if soft cruelty was somehow less cruel. But he did not raise his voice. He did not defend his clothes, his truck, his unpaid bills, or the car his late wife had once dreamed of driving across the city bridge at sunset. He only placed the cleaned Mustang emblem on the hood, right where it belonged, and said, "Some things only look broken to people who don't know how to love them." For a moment, Vivian's smile weakened, just enough for no one else to notice. Then Grant waved toward security. "Let's clear the floor." 2 guards approached, not harshly, but firmly, and Caleb nodded before they could touch the car. He opened the driver's door, helped Lily into the passenger seat, and turned the key. The Mustang coughed, shook, and finally started with a rough, uneven rumble that made people laugh again. But Lily did not laugh. She looked through the windshield at the rich, bright room that had made her father small, and she saw him sit taller than every man inside it. As Caleb eased the Mustang out of the showroom, Vivian turned away as if the moment was already over. She did not know that someone had recorded every word. She did not know the clip would spread across the city by morning. And she certainly did not know that 30 days later, the same broken Mustang would roll down Main Street and leave the entire city in stunned silence. The Mustang barely made it 3 blocks before Caleb pulled into the cracked parking lot behind Whitaker Auto Repair, the small garage he rented month to month on the edge of town where the streetlights flickered and the coffee was always stronger than the morning. Lily stayed quiet the whole way home, her sketchbook closed on her lap, her eyes fixed on the hood as if the car itself might apologize for embarrassing them. Caleb shut off the engine, and the old garage filled with the soft ticking of cooling metal. "They laughed at her," Lily said at last. Caleb did not answer right away. He looked at the faded steering wheel, at the small tear in the passenger seat where Megan used to tap her fingers when she sang along to the radio, at the dusty rearview mirror still hanging slightly crooked because she had bumped it once while laughing too hard. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "They laughed because they did not know her. Lily looked up. Mom loved this car, did she not? Caleb swallowed. Outside, a freight train sounded in the distance, low and lonely, carrying somebody else's tomorrow through the dark. She loved what it could become, he said. She used to say every old machine had a memory inside it. You just had to be patient enough to hear it. The garage smelled of motor oil, sawdust, and cold concrete. On the back wall, under a faded American flag and a row of rusted wrenches, hung a photograph of Megan Whitaker leaning against that same Mustang 12 years earlier, young and bright-eyed, her blonde hair tied back with a red scarf, one hand on the roof like she was greeting an old friend. Back then the paint still had a shine. Back then Caleb still wore clean shirts to engineering meetings. Back then he believed life gave warnings before it took things away. Lily climbed out and walked to the photo. Was she going to make it blue? She asked. Caleb smiled faintly. Midnight blue. Silver stripes. White leather seats if we ever had the money. And the bridge? Caleb nodded. She wanted to drive it across the Monroe Street Bridge on our 10th anniversary. Windows down. Radio loud. Like teenagers. Lily touched the edge of the frame. But she got sick before that. The words were simple, but they landed heavy. Caleb walked over and knelt beside her. Yes, he said. She did. There was no dramatic thunder, no perfect speech, no music rising in the walls. Just a father, a daughter, and a car that had waited too long under a torn canvas tarp. Caleb had not left the Mustang unfinished because he forgot Megan. He had left it untouched because every bolt remembered her hands, every scratch remembered her laugh, and some grief does not shout. It sits quietly in the corner until someone brave enough turns on the light. Lily opened her sketchbook and showed him the drawing she had carried into the showroom. The Mustang was beautiful there, painted deep blue beneath a gold sunset, crossing a bridge with 3 people inside instead of 2. I drew Mom in the back seat, she whispered. Caleb stared at the page, and for the first time that night, his eyes filled. Daddy, Lily asked, can broken things become beautiful again? Caleb looked at the real Mustang, tired, dented, humiliated, and still somehow waiting. Then he looked at his daughter, who needed more than an answer. She needed a promise. Only if someone stays, he said. By sunrise, the video had already found its audience. It moved from one phone to another, from kitchen tables to office elevators, from the high school parking lot to the service counter at the parts store, carrying Caleb's quiet humiliation farther than his old Mustang had ever driven. The clip was only 32 seconds long, but cruelty does not need much time when people are willing to replay it. Vivian's polished voice. Grant's smirk. The laughter. Lily standing beside her father with her sketchbook held against her chest. By 9 in the morning, someone had added a caption that read, "Local dad brings dead car to luxury showcase." By noon, strangers were making jokes about it over sandwiches and coffee. Caleb saw none of it at first. He was under the Mustang, draining old oil into a dented pan, trying to convince himself that a promise made in grief could still become work done with grace. Then his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 10 times. He wiped his hands on a shop towel and saw messages from people he had not heard from in years. Some were kind. Most were not. You are famous, man. That car is finished. Should have stayed home. Caleb turned the phone face down. He had learned long ago that not every voice deserved a room inside his mind. But Lily had not learned that yet. At school, the clip traveled faster than the morning bell. A boy near the lockers made engine noises when she walked past. 2 girls whispered, then laughed behind their hands. At lunch, someone pointed at her sketchbook and asked if she was drawing another piece of junk. Lily did not cry where they could see it. She carried her tray to the far end of the cafeteria, sat alone, and pressed both hands over the cover of her sketchbook as if protecting a living thing. Across town, in the glass tower of Heartfelt Motors, Grant Maddox watched the numbers climb on his tablet. "This is engagement," he said, pleased with himself. "People love contrast. Future versus failure. Innovation versus nostalgia." Vivian stood by the window of her 32nd floor office, looking down at the city she had spent her adult life trying to own without ever truly belonging to it. "Was the child in the frame?" she asked. Grant blinked. "What? His daughter. Was she visible?" "A little. But that is what makes it emotional." Vivian said nothing. In the conference room later that morning, executives laughed carefully while Grant presented the clip as a brand opportunity. He suggested a campaign about leaving the past behind, with Heartfelt Motors positioned as the clean, bright road forward. The room nodded because expensive rooms often mistake confidence for wisdom. Only one man did not nod. Walter Boone sat near the end of the table, silver-haired, heavy-eyed, his hands folded over a yellow legal pad he had not written on in 20 minutes. He had spent 40 years listening to engines and men, and he knew when something was being misread. "That single dad," Walter said quietly. "What was his name?" Grant glanced at his notes. "Caleb Whitaker." Walter's face changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Vivian noticed. "You know him?" Walter looked at the frozen image on the screen, Caleb bent over the fallen Mustang emblem, Lily beside him, the whole room laughing at a man who refused to bow. "I know the name," he said. "Years ago, there was a young engineer in Detroit who could make an engine sound like it had a conscience. He walked away before the industry understood what it had lost." Grant scoffed. "You think that guy is some genius?" Walter did not look at him. "I think 30 days from now, this city may owe that man an apology." The room went still, but only for a moment. Then Grant laughed again, and the others followed because laughter is easier than humility. Vivian did not laugh. That evening, after the building emptied and the city lights blinked awake below her office windows, she replayed the clip alone. This time, she did not watch the car. She watched Caleb's hands. Steady. Careful. Gentle with a broken emblem everyone else thought was worthless. And for the first time, something small and uncomfortable moved beneath her certainty. The challenge came on a Thursday afternoon, dressed up as entertainment and posted online like a joke that had grown legs. Grant Maddox stood in front of the Heartfelt Motors logo with a smile too wide to be sincere and announced that the company believed in community spirit, second chances, and good clean fun. Then he looked straight into the camera and said Caleb Whitaker had 30 days to make his old Mustang run proudly through the Monroe Street Heritage Parade. If Caleb succeeded, Heartfelt Motors would donate $100,000 to Lily's elementary school to save its art and music programs. If he failed, the car would be delivered to a scrapyard during the parade festival, and the city would finally stop pretending rust was history. By sunset, everyone had seen it. By dinner, people were choosing sides. By bedtime, Lily sat at the kitchen table in their small rental house, staring at the screen with her untouched macaroni and cheese growing cold in front of her. Caleb stood by the sink, his work shirt still smelling of gasoline and rain, reading the comments in silence until he could not read anymore. "We do not have to answer," he said. Lily looked up. "But my school, Daddy." He closed his eyes for a moment. Lincoln Elementary had already cut the choir program in half. The library opened only 3 days a week. Lily's art teacher had been buying crayons with her own paycheck since February. Caleb knew what that money could do. He also knew what Grant was really asking. Not for a race. Not for a repair. He was asking Caleb to put Megan's memory on a stage so strangers could laugh if his hands were not strong enough to bring it back. "That car is your mom's," Caleb said softly. "It is not a bet." Lily pushed her sketchbook toward him. The drawing was taped now, repaired where she had torn it at school, the crease running across the Mustang like a scar. "Mom always said helping people mattered," she whispered. Caleb looked at the page. He saw midnight blue paint, silver stripes, the bridge, the sunset, and 3 people in a car that had never taken that ride. Rain tapped against the kitchen window. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and went quiet. Caleb had spent years teaching his daughter that dignity was not the same as pride. Pride said, prove them wrong. Dignity said, do what is right even when wrong people are watching. The next morning, Caleb drove to the garage before dawn. He rolled up the metal door, pulled the canvas tarp off the Mustang, and stood there with a cup of gas station coffee cooling in his hand. The car looked worse under the gray morning light. Rust along the quarter panels. Dry-rotted tires. A tired engine that had forgotten the sound of confidence. He walked around it once, then twice, listening the way a doctor listens before giving hope a name. 30 days, he said. Walter Boone appeared at the garage entrance just after 7, carrying a cardboard box of old parts and wearing the expression of a man who had already made peace with trouble. Caleb turned. You should not be here. Walter set the box down. Probably not. Hartwell will not like it. Hartwell does not own my conscience. Caleb looked into the box and saw gaskets, relays, a carburetor rebuild kit, and a folded set of yellowed engineering notes. His voice lowered. Why help me? Walter glanced at the Mustang, then at the photograph of Megan on the wall. Because some machines are not restored with money. They are restored with respect. By noon, Caleb had the hood off. By evening, his knuckles were scraped from old bolts and his back ached from bending over the engine bay. Lily came after school and numbered small parts with colored stickers, whispering to each one as if giving it a place in the world. On the workbench, Caleb wrote the first line of a plan in pencil. Day 1, listen before fixing. Outside, a pickup slowed down, and someone laughed from the window. Caleb did not look up. He had accepted the challenge, but not the insult. He was not rebuilding the Mustang to humiliate Vivian Hartwell. He was not doing it to feed the city another spectacle. He was doing it because a little girl still believed broken things could become beautiful again, and because 30 days was long enough for quiet dignity to become thunder. By the 3rd day, the garage no longer felt like a place where cars came to be fixed. It felt like a chapel built out of concrete, steel, and second chances. Caleb worked before sunrise and after midnight, keeping his regular repair jobs during the day so rent would not fall behind, then returning to the Mustang when the city grew quiet enough for old memories to speak. Day 4, he removed the cracked radiator. Day 6, Lily labeled every bolt with colored stickers and lined them in egg cartons like tiny soldiers waiting for orders. Day 8, Walter Boone brought an original wiring diagram wrapped in wax paper and said nothing except, found it in a drawer. Caleb knew better. Men like Walter did not accidentally find grace. They chose where to place it. The Mustang came apart slowly, then honestly. Under the hood, Caleb found old repairs done in haste, wires patched with cheap tape, hoses stiff as dry branches, and an engine tired from years of being asked to survive instead of live. He did not curse it. He did not blame the years. He simply touched the valve cover and whispered, "We will take our time." Outside, the city kept laughing. Grant's campaign had grown teeth. Online, Hartwell Motors posted bright graphics about innovation leaving rust behind. A local radio host joked that Caleb should attach a lawn-mower engine and call it Progress. At the parts store, a cashier recognized him and gave a thin smile. "You really think you can get that thing parade-ready?" Caleb set a fuel filter on the counter. "I think it deserves the work." That was all. No speech. No anger. Just dignity with grease under its fingernails. But the pressure did not stay outside. On day 11, Lily came home quieter than usual. She placed her backpack by the garage door, opened her sketchbook, and showed Caleb a page where someone had written "dead car" in black marker across her drawing. Caleb felt something rise in Him, sharp and hot, but he did not let it reach his voice. "Who did this?" he asked gently. Lily shrugged, trying to be brave in the heartbreaking way children do when they think their pain will burden the people who love them. "It does not matter." Caleb knelt in front of her. "It matters because you matter." Her eyes filled. What if they are right? The garage seemed to hold its breath. Caleb took the sketchbook, laid it flat on the workbench, and carefully covered the ugly words with a clean sheet of tracing paper. Then he drew the Mustang's outline over it, slow and steady. "People can write over your dream," he said. "But they do not get to own the page." Lily watched his hand move. The next day, neighbors started coming. Not many at first. Mrs. Alvarez from next door brought a pot of chicken soup and said mechanics should eat something besides vending machine crackers. Mr. Donnelly, a retired mail carrier, rolled in 2 used tires from his shed. A high school kid named Ryan offered to sweep the floor after his shift at the grocery store because his grandfather had owned a Mustang once and he wanted to hear one start again. Caleb accepted every gift with humility, never acting like help made him smaller. That was one of the quiet miracles Lily noticed. Her father could receive kindness without losing strength. By day 16, the garage glowed late into the night. The hood leaned against the wall. The engine hung from a cherry picker. Walter studied Caleb's hand-drawn modifications with narrowed eyes, realizing the single dad was not merely restoring the car. He was reimagining it. A cleaner fuel system. A custom electric assist hidden respectfully within the old frame. A way to preserve the rumble without poisoning the soul of the machine. "Caleb," Walter said softly, "this is not a repair." Caleb kept his eyes on the blueprint. "No, then what is it?" Caleb glanced at Lily asleep in a folding chair beneath Megan's old denim jacket. "It is a promise learning how to breathe." On day 23, they tried to start the engine. The neighbors gathered near the open garage door. Lily held her breath. Caleb turned the key. The Mustang rumbled once, deep and beautiful, then sputtered and died. Silence fell. Grant would have laughed if he had been there. The city might have too. But Caleb only placed both hands on the steering wheel, closed his eyes, and listened. Then he smiled faintly. "Again," he said. Vivian Hartwell came to the garage on day 24 without cameras, without Grant, and without the sharp certainty she wore so well in public. She parked her black sedan half a block away and walked the rest under a sky the color of wet ash, telling herself she was only there to confirm whether Caleb Whitaker had outside help, whether the city's favorite underdog story was honest or carefully staged. But when she reached the open garage door, she did not find a performance. She found a man sitting alone beneath a hanging work light, his right hand wrapped in a clean bandage, his left hand moving slowly across a pencil drawing so detailed it looked less like a blueprint and more like a confession. The Mustang sat in the center of the garage with its front end raised, its body sanded in patches, its old wounds exposed under primer and dust. Lily was asleep in the back seat, curled beneath Megan's denim jacket, one hand still resting on her sketchbook as if she had fallen asleep guarding a dream. Caleb did not look up at first. "We are closed," he said. Vivian stopped just inside the doorway. The smell of oil, coffee, metal shavings, and rain wrapped around her. It was nothing like the clean laboratories at Hartwell Motors. Nothing gleamed for investors here. Nothing had been arranged for approval. And yet, for the first time in weeks, Vivian felt she was standing in a place where work still meant something. "I did not come to buy anything," she said. Caleb's pencil paused. "Most people from your building do." That quiet sentence landed harder than accusation. Vivian looked at the walls. There were invoices pinned beside Lily's drawings, old photographs of Megan, parts lists written on cardboard, and one sheet covered in equations Vivian recognized immediately. Her company had spent 2 years and millions of dollars chasing a conversion system that could modernize classic cars without erasing their character. There. Engineers had made prototypes that ran clean but sounded empty, machines with no memory in them. Caleb had solved what they had missed with a pencil, a borrowed alternator, and a father's patience. "This is a hybrid assist architecture," Vivian whispered. Caleb finally looked at her. "It is a way to help an old engine carry tomorrow without forgetting yesterday." She stepped closer despite herself. "Why did you never patent this?" "Because I was not building a product." "Then what were you building?" Caleb glanced toward Lily sleeping in the car. His voice softened. "A ride my daughter was promised before her mother got sick." Vivian had prepared questions. She had prepared suspicion. She had prepared the polished distance that kept people from seeing the tired woman beneath the title. None of it survived that answer. She looked at the photograph of Megan on the wall, smiling beside the same Mustang when life was still young enough to be planned. Vivian's own reflection shimmered faintly in the garage window, expensive coat, perfect hair, empty hands. For years, she had believed control was strength. Control in the boardroom. Control in the market. Control over every room she entered. But here was Caleb Whitaker, with overdue bills on the desk and grease on his sleeves, protecting something money could not command. "Why did you take the challenge?" she asked. "You know Grant wanted to embarrass you." "Yes." "Then why give him the stage?" Caleb set the pencil down. "Because my daughter's school needs that money. Because children should not lose music because adults forgot generosity. And because if Lily remembers this month, I would rather she remember that her father kept working than that he stayed angry." Vivian looked down. The rain tapped softly against the garage roof, steady as a clock counting down. For the first time, she understood that Caleb's silence at the showroom had not been weakness. It had been discipline. It had been grace under a weight she had never bothered to see. "I was wrong about you," she said. Caleb did not smile. "You were wrong about the car first." Vivian nodded, accepting the correction like a lesson she had earned. Then Lily stirred in the back seat, opened her sleepy eyes, and saw the woman from the showroom standing near the workbench. For a moment, fear crossed her face. Caleb noticed and stood between them without drama, not as a threat, but as shelter. Vivian saw it, and something inside her broke quietly, the kind of breaking that does not destroy a person, but opens one. "Lily," Vivian said softly, "I owe you an apology." The little girl did not answer right away. She only pulled Megan's jacket closer and looked at her father. Caleb gave the smallest nod. Vivian swallowed, her voice losing its polish. "I should never have laughed at something your mother loved." The garage went still. Outside, cars hissed over wet pavement. Inside, a single tear slipped down Lily's cheek, and Vivian Hartwell, who had faced shareholders, cameras, and entire rooms of powerful men without trembling, found herself unable to look away from the cost of one careless sentence. By day 25, the city had stopped laughing and started watching. That was what worried Grant Maddox. Laughter was easy to manage. Pity could be redirected. But respect, once it began moving through a town, became dangerous to men who built their power on making others look small. Inside Hartwell Motors, Grant stood behind the locked door of a private development bay, staring at photographs of Caleb's hand-drawn plans spread across a stainless steel table. He had not taken the originals. He was too careful for that. He had sent a junior employee to the garage with a delivery box, a company jacket, and a phone camera, and now he had enough blurry images to recognize brilliance but not enough wisdom to understand it. "Can your team build it?" Grant asked. The lead engineer hesitated. "Parts of it, maybe. But there are handwritten notes missing. Calibration details. Driving feel adjustments. Whoever designed this was doing more than math." Grant's smile tightened. "Then do more math." The engineer looked down. "That is not how this works. It is how it works when your job depends on it." By noon, rumors began moving through the building. Heartfelt Motors would unveil a surprise prototype at the Monroe Street Heritage Parade. A miracle conversion system. A classic platform with a clean future. Vivian heard it from Walter Boone, who stepped into her office without knocking and placed one printed photograph on her desk. It showed Caleb's drawing on Grant's table. Vivian did not speak for several seconds. The city moved below her window, bright and careless, unaware that one man's promise was being stolen by a company that already had too much. "How did he get this?" she asked. Walter's voice was low. "Quietly. The way cowards usually take things." Vivian closed her eyes. She could see Caleb in the garage, left hand moving across the blueprint, Lily asleep in the back seat, Megan's photograph watching over all of it. She could still hear herself saying she owed them an apology. Now the apology had grown teeth. "If I expose this before the parade," she said, "the board will say I damaged the company." Walter nodded. "Probably. Stockholders will panic. Likely. Grant will claim it was independent research." "He will." Vivian looked at him. "And if I do nothing?" Walter did not soften the truth. "Then you become exactly who they think you are." That evening, Vivian drove back to Caleb's garage, but she stopped across the street and did not get out. Through the open door, she saw Caleb and Lily working under the warm light. Lily was polishing the Mustang emblem with a soft cloth, turning it in her hands like a little star. Caleb sat beside her, showing her how to move slowly in circles, how not to rush the shine. "When people do wrong, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying through the still air, "do not let them teach you to become wrong too." Lily looked up. "Even if they laugh first?" "Especially then. Even if they take something?" Caleb paused. "Then we tell the truth. But we do not let bitterness drive the car." Vivian gripped the steering wheel. There were boardrooms where people spoke for hours and said nothing worth remembering, and here was a single father in a garage teaching more leadership with one sentence than her company had managed in years. She wanted to walk in. She wanted to confess everything. But shame can make even powerful people feel small. Her phone rang. Grant's name lit the screen. She answered without greeting. "We are presenting tomorrow," he said. "The board loves the surprise prototype. You should stand beside it." Vivian watched Caleb lift the emblem and place it gently on the Mustang's freshly primed hood. "No," she said. Grant went quiet. "Excuse me?" "I said no." His tone hardened. "Be careful, Vivian. The board wants momentum, not guilt." She looked at Lily smiling faintly for the first time in days. "Maybe guilt is what happens when momentum runs over people." Grant laughed under his breath. "You are emotional." Vivian's eyes stayed on the garage. "No. I am late." She ended the call, but she still did not cross the street. Not yet. Because choosing the truth is easy in speeches and costly in real life. That night, Vivian returned to Heartfelt Motors and accessed the security records herself. She found the delivery badge. The time stamp. The employee Grant had used. The internal transfer files. Piece by piece, the truth formed in front of her, quiet and undeniable. At 2 a.m, she saved everything to a private drive and placed it in her purse. Then she stood alone in the dark glass lobby where she had once humiliated a father and his child, and for the first time in a long time, Vivian Heartfelt understood that redemption was not a feeling. It was a choice waiting to be made in public. On the 30th morning, Monroe Street looked like it had dressed itself for a memory. Red, white, and blue banners hung from the lampposts, folding chairs lined the sidewalks, food trucks steamed at the corners, and children waved paper flags while old men in baseball caps argued happily about horsepower. The Heritage Parade had always belonged to the city's dreamers, the farmers who kept old pickups running, the veterans who polished chrome until it reflected the sky, the families who believed a car could carry more than people. It could carry stories. At 10 o'clock, Heartfelt Motors rolled its surprise prototype onto the platform in front of City Hall, and Grant Maddox stepped into the applause like he had invented sunlight. The car was beautiful at a distance, a silver classic shell with a clean energy badge and Heartfelt branding along the side. Vivian stood near the stage in a navy dress and quiet shoes, her purse heavy with proof, her face unreadable. Walter Boone stood 10 feet behind her, arms crossed, watching the machine with the tired sadness of a man who knew it had been dressed in someone else's truth. Grant lifted the microphone. Today, Heartfelt Motors honors the past by leading it into the future. The crowd applauded. Cameras rose. Lily stood with Caleb at the far end of the parade route beside the freshly restored Mustang, her small hands folded so tightly the knuckles had gone pale. The car beside them was no longer the wounded thing the city had mocked. Its body wore midnight blue paint so deep it seemed to hold the morning sky, with silver stripes running clean over the hood like 2 lines of promise. The Mustang emblem shone at the front, the same one Caleb had picked up from the showroom floor. Inside, on the dashboard, Lily had placed a small framed photograph of Megan smiling in sunlight. Caleb looked at it, then at his daughter. "Ready?" he asked. Lily nodded, though her voice trembled. "Do you think Mom can see it?" Caleb rested one hand on the roof. "I think love sees more than we know." At City Hall, Grant signaled the driver of the Heartfelt prototype. The engine turned once. Then again. A thin, uncertain whine passed through the speakers. The dashboard flickered. The car lurched forward 3 feet and stopped. The crowd murmured. Grant laughed nervously. Just a small calibration pause. The driver tried again. This time the prototype gave a hollow cough and went silent. Walter looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at the stage. She knew exactly what had happened. Grant had copied the bones, but not the breath. He had taken photographs of Caleb's design, but missed the handwritten correction that mattered most, the human adjustment Caleb had made after listening to the Mustang fail and trying again. Machines could be copied. Wisdom could not. The murmurs grew louder. Reporters moved closer. Grant's smile collapsed by inches. Then, from the far end of Monroe Street, another sound entered the morning. It was not loud at first. It was low. Steady, warm, like thunder remembering how to be gentle. Conversations faded. Heads turned. The midnight blue Mustang rolled into view, not rushing, not showing off, just moving with a grace that made every joke told about it feel suddenly small. Caleb drove with both hands on the wheel. Lily sat beside him, holding the taped sketchbook drawing against her chest. The engine carried an old American rumble softened by something cleaner beneath it, past and future speaking without arguing. People stood. One by one, phones rose, but no one laughed. Mrs. Alvarez pressed a hand over her mouth. Ryan from the grocery store shouted, then lost his voice to tears. Walter lowered his head, smiling at the pavement. Vivian stepped off the curb without realizing she had moved. As the Mustang passed the stalled Heartfelt prototype, Caleb did not look at Grant. He did not smirk. He did not wave like a victor. He simply drove past with quiet dignity, and somehow that mercy made the moment heavier than revenge ever could have. The crowd went silent, the kind of silence that does not mean emptiness, but recognition. Vivian saw Lily lift Megan's photograph slightly toward the windshield, as if showing her mother the city, the bridge, the promise kept. And in that silence, Vivian Heartfelt finally understood what Caleb had built. Not a car. Not a spectacle. Not an answer to humiliation. He had built a place where grief could sit beside hope and ride forward. The Mustang completed its slow turn in front of City Hall and came to rest beneath the old clock tower, where the parade announcer had forgotten to speak and the band had forgotten to play. For several seconds, the whole city seemed to be listening to the engine breathe. Caleb shut it off, and the silence that followed was even deeper, not awkward, not empty, but full of every word people wished they had not said. Lily stepped out first with Megan's photograph held carefully against her heart. Caleb came around to open her door the rest of the way, because even on the biggest morning of his life, he was still a father before he was anything else. Across the plaza, Grant Maddox tried to recover with a smile and a microphone, but Vivian Hartwell reached the stage before he could turn the failure into another speech. She took the microphone from its stand, looked at Caleb, then at Lily, then at the crowd that had once laughed because laughing was easier than looking closer. "I owe this family the truth," she said. Her voice did not shake, but it had lost the polished coldness people knew from television. "Weeks ago, I mocked a man I had not bothered to understand. I dismissed a car because it looked broken. I dismissed a father because he looked poor. And I allowed my company to turn his dignity into entertainment." The crowd stayed silent. Grant stepped toward her. "Vivian, this is not the place." She turned to him, calm and final. "This is exactly the place." Walter Boone walked forward and handed her the printed evidence. Vivian lifted the pages so the cameras could see them. The prototype that failed here today was built using photographs of Mr. Whitaker's private design, taken without his consent and pushed through our development team under pressure from Grant Maddox. A wave of sound moved through the plaza, disbelief first, then anger, then shame. Grant's face went pale. "That is not the whole story," he said. Walter looked at him with quiet disappointment. "It is enough of it." Vivian continued, effective immediately. Grant Maddox is no longer employed by Hartwell Motors. The board will receive the full report, and Mr. Whitaker will receive a formal apology, legal protection for his design, and the donation promised to Lincoln Elementary. Lily looked up at Caleb. "Daddy, did we win?" Caleb watched Vivian step down from the stage, not proud, not triumphant, but humbled in front of the city she once commanded. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "We kept our promise." Vivian stopped a few feet away from him. Cameras surrounded them, but for once, she did not perform. "Caleb," she said, "I am sorry. To you. To Lily. To Megan's memory. I was wrong about broken things." Caleb studied her for a long moment. The old version of the world would have wanted him to punish her with the perfect sentence. But Caleb had not rebuilt the Mustang to become cruel with better timing. He looked toward the school principal, who was crying quietly near the sidewalk, then toward the children holding handmade signs, then back to Vivian. "Then help fix what was broken," he said. Vivian nodded. The donation went to Lincoln Elementary that week, not under Hartwell's name, and not under Caleb's. At Lily's request, the new Art and Music Fund was named for Megan Whitaker, the woman who had believed old things could still sing. In the months that followed, Vivian kept her word. Hartwell Motors launched a community restoration program with Caleb as lead designer, offering grants to working families who had old cars, old stories, and not enough money to save either one. Walter came out of retirement 3 days a week, though he insisted he was only there to criticize the coffee. Grant disappeared from the city's headlines, replaced by photographs of children painting hubcaps, veterans restoring trucks, and mothers crying when engines they thought were gone forever came back to life. As for Caleb and Vivian, their story did not rush. Real healing rarely does. She came to the garage often, first with paperwork, then with coffee, then with fewer reasons than before. Lily noticed, of course. Children always notice grace before adults find words for it. One evening, weeks after the parade, Caleb drove the Mustang across the Monroe Street Bridge at sunset. Lily sat in the back seat with Megan's photograph beside her. Vivian sat in the passenger seat, quiet, watching the river turn gold beneath them. "I used to think the future had to erase the past," she said. Caleb kept his eyes on the road. "Most people do. And now?" The Mustang carried them forward, steady and warm, its old engine and new heart working together like forgiveness learning a language. Caleb smiled faintly. "Now you know some things are not finished just because they were forgotten." Lily leaned forward from the back seat. Mom would have liked this ride. Caleb reached up and touched the rearview mirror, where a small blue ribbon Megan once tied still moved gently in the breeze. Yes, he whispered. She would have smiled. The city lights flickered on behind them, one by one, but inside that car, nothing needed to be proven anymore. Respect had come quietly. Grace had come late, but not too late. And a single father who never raised his voice had reminded an entire city that dignity does not need to shout. Sometimes it only needs 30 days, a faithful heart, and the courage to start again.